Well, hello. I didn't see you there. This is
It's
me and
me.
Andy. We're just kind of hanging out. I'm Robert Scrobe. I'm the organizer of the Global Virtual Design Sprint. I'm here in Dallas, Texas, and we're joined by Andy Davis. He's a 5-time sumo wrestling champion and Tour de France winner, and he's here. He's here to talk about Thursday of a virtual design sprint, what you can expect, what you should not expect, and other best practices that the both of us would like to convey to all of you, whether you're watching this live right now on YouTube or you're watching a recorded video. Whatever your case may be, we'd like to inform you and let you know what to expect after Thursday or on Thursday and afterwards. Would that be a good summarization, Andy?
Absolutely.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't mention you were a 2-time Tour de France winner. I mentioned that. I left that bit out. So
Yeah, the second one, everyone always forgets about the second one, but that's okay.
that's where you took a club and whacked the back tire of your front person and then just ran over them, just kind of like a leap forward over the finish line. I know the
Yeah,
press
that's it.
blocked that out because they didn't want that. It wasn't good for like, all the advertisers. So I guess we didn't want that.
Yes.
Okay, so on Thursday we have three that you've written out so far, Andy. The first one is a retro strategy, and why don't we get into that topic a bit and talk about
Yep,
when you say retro, you're talking about a retrospective strategy, correct?
that is correct.
Okay.
And
Now
this
for those,
assumes that we've done our testing. I don't know if you and Sandy spoke about testing, but we might need to talk about testing before retro.
we have
Um,
not talked about testing.
okay.
So why don't we do this? We'll
Yes.
take this pillar and we'll just push it over here, and then we'll replace it with this pillar.
Perfect.
And let's talk about, let's chat about user testing. I wonder who they user test when they did the new LinkedIn kind of design that came out this week. Probably a lot
Yeah,
of
I
Facebook
noticed that.
users.
Yeah, it has a Facebook feel, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And it has Facebook feel and it uses Instagram stories now. I even did a
Ah,
story just recently, so I'm going to be just peppering that with interesting unclean shots of myself doing things. So I'll thoroughly enjoy it and see if it has any traction with anything.
yeah, that sounds
Um,
good.
so let's talk about user testing. So the first thing I want to say is you're going to record all of your sessions for offline viewing and analysis. This is different from a traditional design sprint in that normally you're supposed to have everybody in the room to kind of see what's going on with your prototype and how people are going to react to it. That's not what you do with this. You basically either on your own or with another person conduct about a 45 to 60-minute interview that's free. So the thing about user testing is that you're not paying anybody to do this. So this is pro bono testing only. You can get somebody that's your target audience that it's willing to give you some time to go through what you're going to be showing them. But testing is definitely something where you're not going to be offering a $100 Amazon gift certificate for their time. But you want to record all your sessions for you and your teammates to view. If you have 1 or 2 people kind of in that recording session, that's great. If you can get 2 people to talk to each other at the same time that know each other, that's a bonus because then they can actually share perspective and you can record the whole thing. And it really does give, like me and Andy are doing on Thursday, I can riff on some things that he says, and he can also have something to think about while I'm speaking. And when you interview people in pairs, it's the best of both worlds. You get perspective and you get people time to think about their answers before they give it to you, which really helps the quality of the reaction to the prototypes that you're showing them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the focus really is as you're conducting that, um, the focus is probably more often than not going to be qualitative. So you're really trying to have develop that context, really kind of the why behind the comments that they're giving you, and the use of open-ended questions is very, very valuable because it can help provide more opportunities to hear raw comments, right?
And I'll also add open-ended questions and follow-up inquiries. So dig a little deeper in terms of like the surface answer you give and have people explain a bit into detail, and you might uncover some things you normally wouldn't if you're just going off the script and basically just asking the questions as is. Kind of see an opportunity to get a little deeper into what they're talking about, as long as there's an appropriate amount of time for doing things. So ideally, a 2-person team, interviewer plus note taker. So the interviewer can basically concentrate on the interactions going on. And then the note taker is either you just have a recording, you have somebody actually scribing in a Google Doc or even an Excel spreadsheet. That's usually a good combination if you can do it. And then you can take turns between the two of you on who's going to do what. So scripts are important. And by scripts, you mean like a user interview scripts.
Yeah. And
question.
This is always a tricky thing, because rarely does your script, do you wind up following the entire script? And especially early in a prototype phase, you're going to find that either you've done something really great with your prototype and you want to keep learning about what it is that was great. But likewise, they may go, yeah, this one piece isn't so great, or they're giving you feedback. And it may be, as an interviewer, you really kind of want to weigh the importance of, do I really need to know, how important is this information, and how much more valuable would it be to focus on this for a little while and maybe go off script a little bit versus trying to keep it rigid. And it's a balancing act, but it rarely goes according to the script perfectly.
I also added moderator guides are important for everyone to get a high level view of how the questions relate to the sprint questions and the long-term goal. So that's sometimes missed by all sorts of teams, where they are so fixated on trying to get the right questions to figure out if people are going to understand the prototype. But you do want to have a review. The advisor is perfect for this, where they go, okay, your long-term goal is essentially this. What in these series of questions is addressing that particular question or that long-term goal? How are you addressing it in your questioning? Or how are you actually, should you just straight out ask some of the sprint questions or the can we questions that they apply to the situation?
Yes. And most of the teams I've worked with, we always build the script collaboratively, even though there's one person that's kind of taking the lead, kind of guiding us. It's a collaborative effort, and you can do that asynchronously, offline, and then come together and kind of ratify the final script, or you can do it together through the whole piece. But that usually works out very well, and you usually wind up getting a much better script.
And what did you mean by guerrilla testing here?
So guerrilla testing, this is when maybe your script is not fully baked, or perhaps you just don't have an audience. That's one of the things is really finding your test set, the people that you want to talk to. And sometimes guerrilla testing is just, if you've got a prototype in your phone or something that's portable, and just getting out of your office, walking down the street, grabbing somebody, saying, hey, do you have a minute? Showing them your prototype, teeing up kind of the context, saying, what do you think? And, you can get some amazing results with that. They can be very spontaneous. And, through the magic of mobile technology, a lot of that can be done real time, and you record it, and you can get some really interesting feedback.
And if you have the abundance of people, if you have an abundance of people that you can interact with to do usability testing with, it always helps to use a screener. So that, and I don't mean a person like a screener doc, so that you can figure out if you're use a screener doc to target the right audience. And a lot of times you don't have, in this kind of situation, you don't have the luxury of going after people, but that are your target. The difference is that with this version, you're going to have a couple weeks to kind of search for that audience before you actually do testing that week. So if you have the time, great. If not, you can always find people on the fly that will be willing to give you the time, and they'll still provide the function of doing the user interview. Because again, the challenge itself is kind of discounted with the GVDS. It's more having people go through the motions of asking interviews and just talking with them about what you've created.
Yeah. And I would focus exactly kind of what you're saying, which is, the outcomes of your testing and your research is always good, but focus on flexing that muscle, because for a lot of people, this is an area they have not spent much time learning or understanding. So get out and try it. Don't be intimidated. just kind of jump in, and you'd be surprised at how quickly it becomes familiar and comfortable for you.
Exactly it. The moment of truth. Would you like to kind of get into that about reconciling your efforts to your sprint questions?
Yeah, I mean, that's really kind of you've done your research, or you've done your testing, you've collected your feedback, hopefully with an eye on your sprint questions. And, you know, one of the things that is important to feed into the moment of truth is also for the entire team to synthesize the user testing results, right? Listen to the recorded examples, tease out the trends or topics for feedback, kind of the high level bullet points, group those and theme them. And then from that, you can review that when you get to the moment of truth, which is really just, a few simple questions, right? Which is, did the prototype, did it solve the sprint question? What, how does it relate to the long-term goal? What is this viable towards the long-term goal? What does the team think? And really what you're trying to do is find out, it's either kind of a no or a yes, or it might be somewhere in between. And oftentimes you do find an answer that's somewhere in between. If it's a flat out no, then you're presented with kind of that question of, how do we proceed? What do we do? Should we do anything? And then of course, finding the energy around maybe moving forward.
I'll add that it's really hard for a team to quit. It's really hard for a team that they've been so close to basically go like, this was a crapper. It just didn't work out. Yeah. And I think it's something where you got to be okay with, a beautiful disaster, right? Because you still had and not move forward. Because what you've essentially done is you've gone through the process now of a failure that has told you just saved yourself 3 months, 4 months of grief and a lot of stress by basically discovering that some of your initial assumptions were wrong, or your execution on the design side wasn't where people were expecting, but you learned. And and you learned a lot in a short period of time. And that's what you want to focus on. It's not necessarily if you're successful, because you can be 100% successful in this environment and it's not going to matter. It's going to be inspirational for 1 or 2 people that may move past the event with something. But the more important thing is, can you replicate the process outside the GVDS again? If that's a resounding yes, then we've done our job here. And if you haven't, then I've failed in kind of conveying what you need to kind of take away from this event from a process standpoint. So,
yeah, and continuing on after that week, that's a big milestone, a big question. That's kind of why I put the whole there is no try, do or do not. If you find the team is in between, you're better off just maybe calling it done and go through your lessons learned and your takeaways and celebrate. But if the energy's there, and a key word, energy, finding the energy and the commitment, right? Most people have interest in moving forward, but also most people lack the ability to commit and find that energy just because of their own lives and their own jobs and the things that they're doing.
Yeah, I usually recommend not doing it, especially in here. I mean, I've seen enough of this where people really tried. Some people would try to get the team together after the November one and the second one. I think that was the third. And the person kept pressing for it and kept on, they made it all the way till January. And then finally when February hit, people were like, I got other things I got to do. And, I'm looking for this, and my cat died, and, I've been called to duty and all sorts of things. Just things are going to push you in different directions. Yeah. So it's reasonable to assume that you have like a half-life. It's like taking a fish out of water. It's fine if it's in that closed environment, but once it's outside, it's going to start. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Just make sure that you're the point of contact for the team going forward. If people do inquire, if they see your showcase in the future and want to get a download about it, that there's one person that was closest to the entire thing that can tell the story. And one of the good things that's coming from this exercise with networking is that we're going to do every 4 months, we're going to do a a rewind of old teams to get together and just connect and find out what each other is doing. Lisa did that on Friday, and that planted the seed for me to say, you know what, there's a lot of merit in just having people catch up with a shared experience. And if nothing else, it's to kind of, show where things are, what people are doing. It's just a nice catch up. Yeah. It's like
where are they
45, now? 60 minutes. Yeah. I think it's something worth investing.
I can't wait to see those.
Yeah. And who I actually, how far back do I go? Because you can go to GVS-2 and I still have those spreadsheets of everybody and some of the teams, but I got to look at like Team Alana and Team like Pancakes and some of the other ones that were really integrated and looked like they fused together well, and just say, okay, here's the declared date and time. Is this okay for people? Or give them some options and just give them 2 months in advance so that they can have it on the calendar and prepare for it, right? So it'd be my GVDS showcase would be that, and say, as a follow-up, let's plan now for 4 months from now. So it'd be November, December, and then February, January, and then February would be the month where it'd be the catch-up. Show everybody what you got for Christmas, or that kind of deal, and then say, here are the dates that worked for your sprint. Let's make a tentative date for this date at this time, and then a week before I'll say, are people still coming? So at least there's that follow through that'll happen.
That sounds awesome.
Okay, as long as you approve of it, then we can do that.
Well.
Oh, so what's next? I'm going to Disneyland. Robert pays for that all expenses vacation you said during networking. There you go. So share your wild successes and your amazing failures. So typically in teams of the past, how have they done that? How has it been just with the group? Has it been with other people? How have you seen that kind of come around?
Yeah, I really a variety of ways, right? There's the opportunity to participate in the showcase. You've got your individual opportunities through any number of social media outlets. You can talk about, tell a little bit of a narrative or a story around, how the sprint ended. Some people do a day-by-day account for it. Others want to do a summarization of it later. You could do a Medium article that talks about the what you did and maybe what was learned or what the milestones were in your learning, so to speak. And people love to read those because there's so many people are in the same boat, and we're all learning through looking through each other's lenses. So yeah, you LinkedIn, Facebook, I mean, all of the social media outlets, channels that they're available.
It's very noisy over here, so I'll just encourage you to keep talking just temporarily.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, and don't forget, sharing failures is important. And I don't really like the word failure. I like to call it learning, because whenever you fail, you're learning. So find ways to tell that story, and you can share that even within your own professional community or in your office or within your own work environment. I find that everyone's always very interested to hear about design sprints and the methodologies and the advantages that it brings to the table. And if you're failing and you find that, no, you should stop. Again, what Robert was saying is, we learned that in 5 days. We didn't take 3 months to discover that in untold resources. So really important to share that. And then go home and rethink your life, right? That's just more for fun than anything else. But there is some thought to that, right? You learn something. You go home. In the world of pandemic, maybe you go to a different part of your house or you go to the park, and you contemplate, what did this all mean? How do I carry what I learned forward? And myself, going through all the GVDSs and design sprinting and all of that, you find that so many of these things, these tactics, these strategies, these methods, these work frameworks, they can be applied to so many different things. And I think if you go home and rethink kind of what you're learning and how it applies to your life, you're going to find even more value that you can take from it. Mini me. Let's talk to the last one. Looks like Robert's added one here. So consider how you can take what you've learned and apply it to what you do. So that's a little bit of a continuance of what I was just talking about. But you know, whether it's meetings, which I think there's a lot of that going on now, where meeting structures really need the efficiency that design thinking and many of the activities inside of design sprints can provide in sort of a modular format. And then really applying it to other group collaborative sessions that you might find yourself in, or you might be asked to lead, right? And some of this dovetails into what you're sharing. So if you're sharing your successes and your failures, you're going to quickly find that there's an audience out there that might want to tap into what you're learning and want to experience, and even provide opportunities for you to showcase some of the things that you've learned, giving you a great opportunity to practice and use these things to further your career development or to assist other teams.
Yeah, and especially with process and being able to take what comes out of the virtual design sprint and use that for your own purposes, whether it's on your own teams or with projects in the future, definitely something of that nature.
Yeah.
So on the retrospective strategy, what kind of retrospectives have you run that have really worked for you between, let's say, free flowing and structured?
Yeah, and you know, I've seen some that are free flowing where it's just, you know, the typical high level, you know, what went well, what didn't go well, what opportunities do we have, and then just kind of letting the conversation unfold from there. But I think it's important as a facilitator to make sure that you're doing a good job at teasing out that conversation and keeping it going and asking questions, right? Just like Robert and I are doing right now, you know, asking each other questions, kind of exploring the topic. You need to take that same approach to retrospectives, right? And you can ask open-ended questions. I mean, this is not far off from conducting research or user testing. You're just sort of doing this reflection time against yourself and across the team that you're a part of. So, you know, there's other structured approaches, which I think are good too. They provide a nice kind of pathway to walk down. I think one of the things that sometimes people get lost in is understanding some of the difference between, you know, like I'm looking at one right now. It's, you know, what I wish versus what I wonder, right? Some people have a hard time understanding the difference between those two contexts, and I think it's important as a facilitator to frame that up and maybe show what an answer looks like for what I wish or what I wonder. There's other types of questions you can ask, and I think it's important to provide that context.
Yeah, and giving enough time for your retrospective as well. You have something here about blocking time and
Yes.
making sure that people have the time to give feedback. Sometimes if people are pressed for time and they just can't get together for whatever reason, the next best thing is to have them go ahead and fill out the mural or Miro board that you're using to give their feedback. And that's just as good as being there, but it's not quite the same. But it does give everybody a chance to kind of get your thoughts even when you're not there to represent them.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have a hard time getting participation, if you are doing it asynchronously, you know, look for ways to gamify it a little bit, right? Offer some fictitious awards or some sort of acknowledgement for people so that they feel like they've achieved something in the process, right? Because this is at the end. Sometimes these happen, you know, day 5 might happen the following week. Who knows? People begin to get busy, and you know, find creative ways to draw them back in and make it fun. And also, this is really the best time to sort of celebrate the end. You know, have people acknowledge each other. You know, you can even make that part of your retrospective, you know, acknowledgements. And that also is a good thing because in GVDS, we spend some time recognizing each other. And, nominating people for their efforts that they put in. And so doing that collectively, or at least kind of hearing other people's perspectives, can help you effectively write those nominations or those recognitions that get submitted. Oh, I think you're muted, Robert.
Okay, there you go. Hi.
There you go.
Hello.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I was wondering what you meant by don't overlook. What was that? What did you mean by that?
Oh, yeah, don't overlook. Just don't skip the retrospective, right? That kind of, to your point, blocking out time, making sure that it happens. It's easy. People, this may be a low energy phase of the design sprint, and it's really easy to kind of go, oh, well, let's give this 5 minutes or 10 minutes at the end of a session, and try and block out appropriate amount of time and making it meaningful, right? This is a part where, if you do a good job at couching that, you can really cap it off, and it can sort of be the last thing people remember about the sprint, and creating that memorable moment. Memorable moment.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. Usually so I'm going to put one here like that's odds and ends, like, let's couch it as best practices. We've been kind of saying that to a certain extent, but for Thursday or beyond, on Thursday and beyond. So one of the best practices is with this one is to give yourself and the team time to both prototype and test. You don't need to do it all in 1 week. So with the way that GVDS is, you got an extra week for iteration, you got an extra week for extended testing. Maybe the people that you really want to talk to aren't available that week, but they are coming back from vacation the following week. Or your person that's doing no code design of your prototype needs the weekend to really make it sing, then testing starts the following week. So it's more of a relaxed kind of extension. So you don't have to really try to cram everything into that one particular week. You do have the luxury of being able to extend it out a little bit.
Yeah, that's important. And I think it's when it comes to your team, every team's different, but I always like to think of a team and its energy and what we're trying to get done, kind of like a golf swing. I'm not a big golfer, but I do know that the harder you swing the club does not mean you're going to do any better. And oftentimes you're going to do worse. The ball's going to go a million different directions and never where you want it to. And I think if you're sensitive to that and you always focus on having a nice fluid swing and not trying to force anything, I think you'll find that the team responds well.
Also like pedaling downhill in the Tour de France, you're not really accomplishing anything. You're still going to just let the gravity kind of move you along on the bike. And
yeah,
you don't put any extra effort into it if you don't need to. Something else is making sure you connect on LinkedIn and other social sites for networking purposes. Sometimes people overlook this even then. And since you have a shared experience that probably will most likely work out well, it behooves you to kind of make sure you keep that connection in some professional manner beyond saying, let's keep in touch. By connecting on LinkedIn, you essentially establish a known business like connection where you'll be able to see what they do and follow what they do if you want to. But I always say, like, make sure that you're incorporating that networking component to things. And in the same vein, Thursday is a perfect day after you test is to like broadcast what you're doing and how you're doing. So document. Not just for your team, but for people that want to follow what you do. It's always helpful to give an historical narrative of your work and being able to start on Thursday and even beyond of saying, here's how my involvement, here's what I did, here's my contribution. It's something that I'm trying to really hammer this time around to really put out there. Disregarding the likes and the follows, because those don't matter beyond metrics, beyond advertisers and the organization. That's probably where you want to make sure that you give appropriate time to broadcast yourself, improve your reputation, kind of go in that direction.
Yep. That's and for those who are not comfortable with social media, I wasn't comfortable with it, and I just committed to putting my toe in the water and then moving forward, and one thing leads to another, and it feels comfortable, and it doesn't feel as awkward, or you don't have to sit there and kind of wonder what's my storyline, or what do I have to say. You find your way pretty quick.
Yep. And just to make sure that when I'm saying this, I don't have an ulterior motive. I use social media all the time with everything I do. I mean, I have now 4 videos, like I was telling Andy offline, that I have to go and promote. And I subscribe to a lot of different ones: Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, Twitter, Reddit, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I'm forgetting a couple of other ones. But I usually update them all. Slack channels that I subscribe to, and just making sure that people are aware that something has occurred. They have the liberty of basically saying, nah, I don't really care. But the important thing is that I'm kind of constructing the narrative to say, here are these people I talked to, here's what we did, here's why you should care, and here's where you can go with things if there's any action items.
Yep.
And it's a habit I developed early on, about a year and a half ago, when I started doing social media full time. It's something I highly encourage, especially for students, especially for people that are knowledge workers that have a lot real depth, in-depth experience. It just helps to share what you know.
Yeah, and I think don't get too caught up in how frequent or how much your peers are posting. Just try and find your rhythm, right? And find your cadence, and then you can kind of step back and say, is that sort of reaching my goal, or what effect is that having? You can modify that as you wish. And the other thing too, and Robert, you have a great article on writing recommendations. And a kind of a strategy for that. And I think that's a really great way to promote your peers, but also they will appreciate that. And in turn, they will find ways to promote you. And that article and that framework that you provide is really, really handy.
I actually forgot I even wrote that until you mentioned it. But yeah, on LinkedIn, recommendations are the commerce. That's the thing that matters the most. And they can be gamed, they can be pre-written and stuff, but social is where it's at when it comes to evaluating talent. And people are going to search for your name on social and on LinkedIn, or sorry, on LinkedIn, but on Google. And they're going to look for images, they're going to look for reference points, they're going to cross-reference it. And usually HR does this a lot. In fact, when I was a full-time employee, I didn't even look at resumes or cover letters. I went straight to the web to see what people were doing and whether or not they were active or what they were involved with. And it gave me a pretty good narrative of where to go with things. So yeah, thank you for reminding me that. I completely forgot I did that. Okay, so we're way over time because I was tardy for before, but let's kind of review what we did for Thursday and take a look at the whole thing. So on Thursday, you're going to be doing user testing. There's a lot of things that go involved with that, are involved with that we went over. The moment of truth in terms of trying to figure out if your sprint is kind of aligning with your long-term goal and your sprint questions. Did you answer them appropriately? When it's okay to kind of move beyond the sprint and take it on, or just to leave it alone and pat it on the head and say goodbye. The elements involve what's next, like whether it's an all expenses paid vacation, or considering what you've learned and what you're going to apply it to. The retrospective that you would have around getting each other's perspective and learning from that. And then best practices that we briefly covered about sharing what you do, giving yourself time to both prototype and test, and kind of making sure you're leveraging networking that's available to you at the moment. And that's it. That's very much covers the entire gamut of what we've run through in the past 2 or 3 days. I'm gonna see how far I can actually take this bottom part and bring it up, because I know Mural has a limit on it. Nope, that's good enough. Okay.
Cool.
Any commentary at all from you, Andy?
No, I mean, I would say if you're looking at this mural board and you're going, wow, there's a lot of cards here, there's a lot to absorb. Don't be overwhelmed. A lot of it is can be intuitive, and time in the saddle always improves and makes it easy and more familiar. So I'm always a proponent of jump in, give it your all, learn along the way, and have fun.
Yeah, I align with that sentiment. It's basically these cards are basically reflecting experience. So experience is something where you can talk a lot about, and trying to graph it out and document it is exhaustive, not exhausting. But it shows that when you go through this process, you have a lot of things you learn. You get a lot of like perspective. You learn about the different activities and process that go into like virtual design sprints. So if nothing else, we both of us arguably have a lot of experience on the table that just, it's a reflection that's put here on the mural. So I think it's, and along with Sandy as well. So it's really the creation between all three of us. So yeah, take from it what you will, but like everything else, bits and pieces. Ask questions if you see this later on, because this is going up later on the socials. And yeah, I think we're set. Andy, I know it's late. You got to wrap up your green screen and get ready for the weekend.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for staying after. And
You bet.
yeah, I'll put this up later on, but we'll look forward to talking with you next week then.
Fantastic. Sounds great.
And I'll stop the share, and then we'll say goodbye offline.
Okay.
So hang on one second. To everyone else that's on YouTube and watching this in the future, hope everything is well, and we're living in a better tomorrow. Okay.